Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Three Wide. I'm Rick. I'm joined tonight by Anthony and Peter. In the aftermath of Chicagoland, we haven't been with you for a couple of weeks. It's been a busy couple of weeks in NASCAR world and in our own worlds as well. We're going to talk tonight about Sonoma, sort of a postscript to the first road course race of the season, and then we'll be talking about Chicagoland and its impact on this entire season. Alex Bowman, the big winner there at Chicagoland, and we'll talk how this race impacted not just the season, but perhaps Alex's entire career. And then, of course, we will wrap things up tonight with our hot lap session, and we've got a good one for both Anthony and Peter this evening. So, to get ourselves started, Anthony, how's everything going in your neck of the woods there?
Everything's going great. Just adjusting to life with the new one at home, but every day's an adventure, and it's a beautiful reality check to show you that every day is a blessing and don't take it for granted. Enjoy every minute of every day, and it's made everything better. It's made everything just more enhanced.
And it's got to be great to hear from many of the folks in Chase Elliott Nation expressing their congratulations and best wishes. How cool is that?
The response to that, I thought it would just be cool to share the picture. Usually only a few people comment on my posts, but to see darn near 1,000 people respond just by liking the page, and then there was a few other 100 comments of congratulations, was overwhelming. But it goes to reflect on not specifically Chase Elliott fans, but NASCAR Nation as a whole. We are one big family. We share common interests, and when something like that happens, the response was absolutely overwhelming. And thank you to Tommy Joe Martins on Twitter for giving me congratulations on the birth of Anastasia as well. That was actually really cool. And Noah Gregson liked the tweet as well. So to see that was also just like a little extra for me. I'm sure she's not going to care in a few years, but it was pretty cool.
She'll care if Hallie Deegan writes congratulations.
we need to have a show in the next few weeks dedicated to rising stars, focusing on her.
Peter, how is everything in your area this evening? I know that you are getting started on your summer vacation. It must feel good to not to have to get up every single day and get into the school and lesson plans and quizzes and everything else, and just a time to chill a little bit. How's everything with you?
Things are good. Things are really good. I apologize I'm not visually with you guys tonight. My brother needed the webcam. He's a sports major, recent graduate. He's currently trying to do an interview tonight with one of the D1 schools, and I'm hoping that works out for him. But honestly, I'm getting adjusted to it. It's kind of like a return to when I was a student and you had those big, long summer breaks. But at the same point last week, once I finished my last meetings and cleaned up the classroom, I kind of felt displaced. So I was asking a few of my friends who were setting up their summer classes if I could go and help them out there in any way, just to kind of feel useful again. So I'm just kind of utilizing the time and looking forward to what lies ahead in the next few weeks for me.
Well, everybody seems to be doing well, and we're going to get off and running talking NASCAR this evening, and for starters, wine country at Sonoma. Just an interesting afternoon there. Anthony, your thoughts on the happenings out on the West Coast 2 weeks ago?
I loved the pre-race festivities. It was really nice to see the touching moments that they shared with Darrell. His wife was there. Mikey brought him on the walk before the race, got him to be a part of that, which was pretty cool to see. A lot of fans and drivers sending their congratulations out to him. And when it got down to race time, I think that the carousel brought an interesting aspect to the race. Drivers seemed to say at the end of the race that they were a little bit more cautious than they normally are. I think it was a lesson learned from the Roval. Don't be overly aggressive. It was the driver that was going to make the fewest mistakes was the driver that was going to win. And eventually that's the way that it turned out, with a little bit of strategy in there as well for pit stops. I think the race went good. I think it's a reason to keep the carousel. It's a reason to keep going to road courses and maybe a reason to add some more in the future for the sport. I think the sport is starving for different tracks, and I think one of those types of tracks is definitely an additional road course or two.
Peter, your thoughts on the racing at Sonoma? It's always a fun place to go for NASCAR. Your thoughts on the racing, the quality of the racing, and where we might be going with road courses in the future? Is he there?
Sorry about that. I mean, I thought Sonoma was really cool. It always seems to bring a really cool and technical vibe to it. Very different than Watkins Glen with the very fast nature that the Glen has. So I was looking forward to that race weekend. I have to say though, I was a little disappointed in some aspects of it. I think ever since the addition of stages, it's kind of taken a little bit away from the road course racing. I understand that there is a different strategy to racing the road courses with the stage racing, but I have to say I was kind of bummed. You saw drivers early on, most notably William Byron, who started on the outside front row, and it seemed that, you know, they had to play a different strategy. They knew where they were in the points, but I think, you know, if stage racing doesn't exist, you're probably seeing another rookie contender going for their first W. I mean, that car was stout and that car was dominant early on, but because they knew that they had to kind of choose a strategy and try to gain as many points as they could, it kind of changed the vibe there. So I was a little disappointed to see that some drivers were, I guess, plotting their moves early on in stage one, like, hey, we're not here to win the race. We're here to gain as many points as possible, and not really going for the win, because I think that takes away from the intensity that we're used to seeing at road courses. I love that the road courses are aggressive. There's not much room to escape your enemies or your friends. And I feel like when you play these kind of strategies involved in stage racing, you're taking that away. There was some intensity. I love the back and forth between Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch, but ultimately I felt like, you know, road courses in Sonoma of years past, there was a lot more unhappy drivers leaving the racetrack than there were this last few years with the stage racing.
So where do you think road course racing goes from here? We've got, obviously, Watkins Glen. They've got the Roval in Charlotte. Do you think over the next couple of years, and certainly not next year, but maybe when we get to 2021, is NASCAR going to actually add another road course into the mix?
I think before you see a new road course added, I think you'll probably see a track like Watkins Glen add the boot to their layout, go for their full international layout the same way that Sonoma did this year. That would be a really cool layout for Watkins Glen, that charged down the carousel into, I think it's turn 8, the left-hander. It's a downhill. It's a deep turn. That's a great passing opportunity on the track. A lot of the IMSA racing, there's a lot of drama that happens in those turns. I feel like that is a possibility for 2021. Maybe even 2020. Let's not forget, Sonoma didn't introduce the carousel into the layout or announce the carousel until the day after the Roval race, because they saw how exciting that race was. So I think it's a possibility even for next year for Watkins Glen to do something like that, considering that their 6-hour endurance race is so close to the NASCAR calendar. It's only about 4 or 5 weeks difference. There's not really a lot of prep that you'd have to do for the NASCAR race as a whole for the layout. A track I'd like to see probably added would be something like Road America. We know the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series go to Road America, Mid-Ohio, and Mosport up in Canada. Mosport's a really, really fun track, but I don't see where you could fit it in the schedule for the Cup Series. I think that's something that should stay in the lower series. I think Road America would be a really cool addition. Ideally, I'd love to see them go to Long Beach. I want to see NASCAR stock cars on a street course, and I think Long Beach is one of the smoothest ones that we have. But I do think we can see some being added on in 2021. But before that, I think you see some experimentation with existing layouts.
Peter, your thoughts on where NASCAR goes with road course racing? I know there's been a lot of fan reaction to it, and ultimately, you know, the decisions on scheduling are usually a couple of years out. Where do you think NASCAR is going to go with this, Peter?
I mean, that poses a really great question. As Anthony said before, I mean, we got the lower series at different tracks that the Cup Series isn't going to as of right now. So it seems like that could be a home run. These races are among the most popular and sell out a lot of seats throughout the season. So there is definitely an outcry, or at least support, for road courses and road course racing in NASCAR. I'd love to see them race at Mid Ohio or Road America, as Anthony said. Again, tracks that we're sending the Xfinity Series to. It would seem like a home run or a no-brainer to see if we could kind of figure that out. However, I think that we're most likely going to see the addition of another Roval track in the not-so-distant future. I think that what they've done at Charlotte Motor Speedway has been a home run, although we have a very small sample size to test that with. I think it was a really great thing to do to bring something new, fresh, and different to NASCAR. It reminds me, and Anthony probably remembers this as well, of the old PlayStation 2 EA Sports NASCAR games, where you had these fantasy tracks that you went against your rival with, and they were like kind of Roval-esque in such a way. They were great. They were a lot of fun. So I can see that happening. If I had to go and name one, just based off of my skepticism with the idea of a doubleheader, I would say that Pocono is probably one of those tracks that could get a Roval. I think Texas is another one. I think Texas could be a track that has 2 dates that could probably sustain it. So I think we probably would see more of the same of that. However, like Anthony, I would be very intrigued to see us try and attempt a city circuit race in the future. I don't know if it'll be something that's possible. I'd love to see it in the Big Apple, so I don't have to go too far. But I would love to see NASCAR try something different, because road courses are different. We used to say we only turned right twice a year. Now we get to say we turn right 3 times, and it's been a home run. I hope it continues. I hope the trend increases.
Yeah, that's a good note about what Peter said. There were talks a few weeks after they announced the doubleheader at Pocono that there is a small possibility, and there is small talks about one of the races, probably that Saturday race, maybe being the road course, just to change it up. It seems like it's kind of in Pocono's hands. So never know. We could see that announcement come as early as the end of the season.
Interesting. And I do like Peter's idea on something in the Big Apple. I know that the area around the Meadowlands complex has been used in the past for road course racing. They haven't really changed the configurations of those service roads around the sports complex. Could be interesting. I know they've wanted to get a little bit of a heavier presence in the country's largest city. That might be a way for NASCAR to do it. It'll be interesting to see over the next 5 years where NASCAR goes with all of this. I think the fans are speaking, and they're hearing the fans about road courses and short tracks, and a few of the things that we've talked about on this show, and road courses are right at the top of that list. Let's shift our attention 2,000 miles to the east, and a track that over the years has taken its share of knocks. It's been moved around the schedule a few times, but something magical happened, I think, this past Sunday at Chicagoland. And I thought the racing was terrific. I thought the outcome was something that really is made of the stuff, of fantasy, because here's a guy who's really paid his dues, and to see Alex Bowman in Victory Lane was one of the great stories, I think, of this NASCAR season, and maybe over the past several seasons. Anthony, your thoughts on the racing at Chicagoland this past Sunday?
The racing as a whole did not disappoint. Even last year's race didn't disappoint. It seems like Chicagoland, as it ages, kind of puts on better races. We've seen really good battles in the midfield. I think the package, again, worked really well. But then again, we were talking about that off camera. Even at the end of the Kansas recap, we kind of said, look, circle Chicagoland. Chicagoland's very similar. Same aged asphalt, same kind of environment, or region of the country. It was a race that produced. I think it's one of the race that kind of now proves this package works best at tracks like this, not at a place like Pocono or Auto Club. There's a certain niche, and it's kind of alluding that you kind of have to change the package for different tracks now. I think you got to introduce different aero packages. The racing was great. Bowman and Greg Ives brought the same exact car that they had at Kansas, which was a stellar move on their part. They didn't over adjust for the rain delay. And if you think about it, all the stars aligned for Alex Bowman. Look at what happened in Kansas. Before the sun set, he was a mid-teens result at best. The sun started to set and his speed started to pick up. Chicagoland, he started a little bit more up front. They got that rain delay, brought it into the night, cooled down that track, made it green. They kept their cool, and that car was stellar. He led 88 laps to finish off the race. An amazing battle with Kyle Larson. This is the first time we've seen with this package that you get past and then you can come right back and get them. But I think that was more like how they interviewed Alex Bowman on NBC Sports yesterday, and they asked him that exact question. Look, Jeff Burton said it. He said, look, when you got passed by Larson, we thought that was it, that it was done. He was going to win the race. Then they said, how'd you do it? He was like, there was nothing I did behind the wheel. It was just all in my head. I wasn't going to be denied a win. I wasn't going to finish second again. You could see that in him. It was probably one of the most welcome victories that we've seen in quite a while for a driver. It was a feel-good story, and you kind of got the hint coming in to the mid part of this season after he had those 3 seconds in a row and started really turning it up around Dover, that it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. It was, you had a really good feeling that it happened this season. And what better timing, Nationwide announces that they're departing the team at the end of the year. It seems like Bowman is in a little bit of a pickle towards the end, maybe fighting for his career. And for him to pull out this victory, it's not just life-changing, it's career-saving. And it's one of those victories where I can't really remember the last time a victory saved somebody's career and just gave so much hope for this kid and showed what he can really do, and shows everybody, look, work hard, start off with whatever team you can start off with. It's worth it. The work is worth it. Just keep going for it, and eventually you'll get your goals. And to see how emotional he was in victory lane was worth the wait for a guy like Alex Bowman.
Peter, I know that in the locale that you were in watching the race, it got pretty emotional when the race ended. First, your thoughts on the racing. Second, your thoughts on Alex Bowman, and share with us just how excited the folks were where you were watching the race to see this young man succeed, where he had so many second place finishes, very, very close. And Chicagoland did the trick for him. And I agree, it was a career-saving victory. Your thoughts?
Oh, I mean, first off, congrats to Alex Bowman, the 88. What a finish! That was unbelievable. And thank you for Mother Nature for creating some of this epic finish. Like Anthony said, with the track cooling down, the intensity picked up once they restarted that race. From what I was able to see, and I kind of caught it right after the red flag was lifted from when we were coming home. It was great racing all around. I was able to listen to some of the MRN broadcast on my way, and the drama was highlighted by MRN. They usually do a fantastic job, but not to the effect of what I saw. It was really awesome to see, but I think one of the big winners as well was the fans. I mean, what I heard from MRN was the weather was wild there, and when they stopped the race about 3 p.m. our time, and then when they restarted the race under that lengthy delay, those that stuck it out, thank you so much. You guys were in for a treat. You guys are the real winners here. So that was pretty awesome to see. Popular win, not only for Hendrick Motorsports and the huge fan bases that kind of follow it, especially the '88 fans who stuck around and support Alex ever since Junior's retirement. So it was awesome to see the '88 car back in victory lane. I believe it's been 3 years since the '88 has been there. It was awesome to see that. So it was really cool. But this is huge, like Anthony said. This is a big moment for him. We recently heard that Nationwide wasn't going to come back for another year, like they initially signed last year. It starts to become a lot of doubt about Alex Bowman, whether or not they could win and produce at the Cup level. Unfortunately, he lost the Nationwide sponsorship. But the resiliency and the tenacity that we saw from Alex Bowman when he was rattling off those second place finishes, that never went away. He stuck with it. He refused to lose, and he went for it. Like they said on NASCAR America, like Anthony alluded to, when Larson passed him, thought it was over. We saw time and time again earlier on in this race. We saw it as well when Harvick was leading and Jimmy Johnson struggled to get past. Still extremely tough to pass the leader. So to see him sail it in there and drive in and, no holds barred, just kind of go for the W and not wreck the guy, it was awesome to see. Awesome to see. The last couple of things I have to say about it was, from where I was watching it, my fiance is a huge Alex Bowman fan now. She's kind of gravitated towards him the last year or two as he's come up to Cup and as he's inherited the '88, which is refreshing for me because we get to root for the same team in Hendrick Motorsports. But she was excited. She was so knocked down after the Kansas race. It reminded me of when I was begging and praying for Chase Elliott to win in the 24 car. I kept telling her I don't think it's going to happen. I started getting defeated and thought there was no hope. My fiance was the same way. She was thinking it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And we just watched on the edge of our seats, praying, hoping it would happen. She was on the floor at one point, praying, screaming at the television. And then when he finally won, it was pretty much quiet. When he passed Larson back, we erupted. But when he finally won, we were just shocked. It was awesome to see. It was great, great story. It's always fun, I think, no matter who or what team they're on, to see somebody win for the first time. And hopefully this is the first of many for Alex Bowman.
Yeah. It's also important to note that that's Exalta's first visit to victory lane since Michigan of 2014 with the one and only 24 Jeff Gordon.
Yep.
Okay, well, we have to mention it. And I was just looking it up to make sure I was going to say it correctly. For several weeks now on this show, we have been talking about the very slow and steady and then very steady resurgence by Hendrick Motorsports. All of the drivers, starting with Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman and William Byron and Old Seven Time, have really turned up the heat and have embraced the package and embraced this car finally. A story broke yesterday. By Jim Utter, and questions that were posed to Martin Truex Jr. And Truex replied that he felt that this was just 1 week, not to read too much into this. I have my own thoughts on it, but I'd really like to get a take from the two of you, because this isn't really a new story on this show. We've been talking about it, to be honest with you, all season long, about how Hendrick looked like they were starting to make some positive moves toward being the powerhouse that we've all grown accustomed to them being. Anthony, your thoughts on what Truex said? Any validity to it? Or is this just, to be perfectly blunt, more sour grapes from the Joe Gibbs camp when they don't win?
I don't know if it's more sour grapes. I think what it is, it's more of something they're not familiar with. So they're kind of just brushing it off because I feel like they think they should be the dominant team, as they've proven over the last few years with JGR. Up until then, you've only had JGR and Roger Penske dominance. You had Chase Elliott with one win at Talladega, which was great for Hendrick. But again, it's one of those tracks where it's like, all right, well, almost everybody's got a chance to win. So you could, at that point, I think if Truex said it after that race, you definitely can take it with a little bit of weight. Yeah, all right, it was a one-off race. But look at the results of Hendrick Motorsports since then, and you see, like you said, a continuing growing upward trend. Talladega started a 5-race streak for Chase Elliott, finishing in the top 5. It started a 3-race streak of runner-up finishes for Alex Bowman, who then continued, I think, another 3 or 4 races of top 10 finishes before I think he had an 11th at Sonoma. I think it was one of the first races he was outside the top 10. He's been one of the kids and one of the drivers that had the biggest climbs in the charts in the last 2.5 months as far as point standings has occurred. I don't know if it's sour grapes. I think it's more of JGR expecting to win week in and week out. And then for somebody like Hendrick to come in and they're going to say, yeah, no, it's just a one-off for Hendrick. But there was also sayings of, the reason why they probably won was because they were one of the few teams that came in fast off the truck. You see that with the package lately, especially since the one-off qualifying. You see in the first few practices, people start panicking. Oh, Chase is 24th fastest in practice. Bowman's only top teens. They're not focusing on qualifying setups like everybody else is. They're the ones that are trying to find speed for the races. They realize that one-off qualifying, it doesn't mean anything. And with this package, it's about the longevity of the race, and they want to be there at the end. And Hendrick seems to be one of those teams that has put in the most work over the off season, and definitely over the last 2 or 3 months. I think the momentum is going to carry. You're going to see a great race at Daytona coming up where, again, all 4 of our drivers can win, where anybody can win. But then you go back to some tracks where we have really good chances of having really strong finishes and some pretty good chances of victory over the next 2 months before the playoffs end.
Peter, your thoughts on the comments that Jim Utter published from Martin Truex Jr.? Is it something that the Gibbs camp is just kind of not getting, or is because really and truly, as Anthony said, Hendrick Motorsports has been really slowly and steadily putting together very good finishes by all 4 drivers, and I have a stat that I'll give everybody in a moment for those who aren't keeping score. But your thoughts on what Martin said, and is he way off base here?
It poses a really great point. I mean, I like to say that Hendrick, we've said it all before, is turning the corner. But I feel like at this point in the season where they are, maybe they're mid-turn right now. I can't say they're turning the corner because they consistently put together the work. We're seeing different things from each of them. Chase, week in and week out, with the exception of a little bad luck at Sonoma with the engine problem, and then the late going with the pit road miscue. Chase is week in and week out one of those drivers you got to look for inside the top 5. That's something that can't go unnoticed. William Byron, if only he can make his Sundays as good as his Saturdays. He puts together awesome qualifying runs, has great speed in practice, and they seem to be figuring it out too. The parent of Chad Knaus has definitely done something for that 24 team. They're on the rise. My guy Jimmy Johnson, it was so refreshing to see him competitive again, to see him run up front, to have track position, and to continuously maintain that track position throughout the course of an entire race weekend that we saw at Chicagoland. So, Old 7-time is possibly in the midst of a rebound right now, which is something that I feel that NASCAR needs. NASCAR's better when Jimmy Johnson is competitive. NASCAR's better when Jimmy Johnson is in the spotlight, because he is such a great ambassador and representative to the sport. He's an all-around awesome person, and he's your greatest driver on the track right now, regardless of how many races Martin Truex Jr. has won in the last few years. You're not Jimmy Johnson. You know, your words aren't as strong as Jimmy's words, and neither your teammate Kyle Busch is. You're the most dominant team, but you don't represent our sport. So it's really refreshing to see another dominant team kind of begin this rise. I wouldn't say it's a meteoric rise. I wouldn't say they're quite there yet, because Gibbs is still the class of the field. Penske's right there with them. I would say Penske's probably got 3 cars that could win any given Sunday, where Gibbs has got about 2, but the speed is just there. Going into his comments, I don't think he's that far off, though. I think Martin Truex Jr.'s got some validity to his statement. I think based on how I perceive each race weekend, unless they're a track you're going to see later on in the season, you have to take them one race, one at a time, see what you got. If it's not a track you return to, if there's not so much you can translate and implement in another track, then yeah, maybe his words actually hold water. Chicagoland's not a playoff track, but Kansas is. Very similar place. There's tracks that are very similar. The mile and a half, so cookie cutters, as they've been referred to, are notoriously called over the years. So I think there is some grounds to this. Isn't really a one-off. The big thing I would take notice if I was him at Joe Gibbs Racing is this was the first weekend that all 4 cars unloaded off the truck pretty fast. So they may be coming. And another team, and then I want to hear your thoughts. Another team that looks like they're really turning the corner, the sleeping giant at Stewart-Haas. No wins, but there's a lot of speed there. They're coming. Rick, what are your thoughts on Truex's words?
Well, when I first read them, I thought to myself, this is kind of a typical thing from the Gibbs camp that, they do expect to win every week, and they should. Obviously nobody gets into this sport to finish 10th every week. That's unless you're just, the old-fashioned start and park guys who knew they never had a shot. Good teams want to win. The more I thought about it, the more I started looking at statistics, and Hendrick Motorsports is clearly on the rise. Right now, if you look at the standings, Chase Elliott is 7th, Alex Bowman 9th, William Byron 12th, and Jimmy Johnson 14th. That's really not that bad a showing for a team that everybody, and I mean everybody in the sport, had already buried by the time we got to Daytona this year. Johnson was done. Byron still needed a lot of refinement. Even on this show, if you think about it, and the tapes are there to go back and listen, Bowman was viewed as someone who had to produce or he was done. The only glimmer of hope that we saw at HMS was Chase Elliott. He was the one given. And that, to be truthful, when you look at the statistics, has been turned around. I agree. I don't think they are in the Joe Gibbs or Penske class yet. But, winning has a way of becoming contagious. And that's true in any sport. When you win or you play well, everybody else around you tends to step up their game. And I'm going to tell you, there are some tracks coming up that are tailor-made for Hendrick Motorsports. I think that Truex has some validity to what he's saying, but I can see the day coming where he may have to eat those words, because Mr. H has a way of bringing forth the talent, getting the best out of the people. And it doesn't really matter whether it's the guy behind the wheel or the guy back in the shop doing metal fabrication. He has a way of doing that. He's not nearly the very stern taskmaster that Roger Penske is, but I'll tell you what, you can't argue the results this guy's got. over a longer stretch of time. And I will tell you, I look for great things from HMS as the rest of the regular season unfolds. Anything to add, Anthony?
One thing you always got to learn about Mr. H and Team Hendrick is they may be down, but they're never dead. Do not count them out. You do not want to wake the beast.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And, what's great about this, and this has not been part of this discussion, is the fact that the manufacturer that had been so dominant for so many years had been taking it on the chin as of late, without a whole lot to brag about, be happy about. And I will tell you, with the resurgence of HMS and some very good driving by both Kyle Larson and Kurt Busch, I would say the bow tie is definitely back, which is good for the sport. This sport is better when Chevrolet and Ford put up good showings. That's not meant to knock Toyota. They have spent millions of dollars on this sport. They are to be commended for everything that they've done. But I will tell you, it is a better sport when both Chevy and Ford are thriving.
Absolutely. When all three of them are almost on the same level, and it's you can't go into a racetrack like we did back in 2017 and say, yeah, Toyota's probably going to win because it's a mile and a half. When you can go into a race and you can't pick a winner solely because of what car he's driving, the sport is at its best and most competitive right there.
Peter, anything to add on this topic of Hendrick Motorsports, Chevrolet, and just the fact that the sport really is made better when all of the manufacturers are competitive?
Oh, I mean, it definitely is. It's definitely a better sport when all three are, competitive. Like you alluded to before, I couldn't agree more with your Ford and Chevy dominance or rivalry. We need that in NASCAR. It can't be one-sided. When it's one-sided, if you're not a fan of that respective manufacturer or team, you're going to have a hard time. And through the '90s with the dominance of Chevrolet, I'm sure a lot of the Ford fans, and even though they're very similar, a lot of the Pontiac fans probably felt that way in turn. But the sport's better when they're all competing against each other, especially the teams too. I mean, that's one thing that we haven't seen in a very long time with NASCAR. But NASCAR is better when a multitude of teams can win. And to finally see us starting to break the Formula One monotony of two elite teams winning, now we're starting to get a third team into the mix and probably a fourth team very soon. It's better when the wealth is being shared. And it's so much better when we're seeing different teams and different drivers, because there's an immense amount of talent in the Cup Series field. It's awesome to see other teams, have a shot and getting some W's. So my hat's off to Chevrolet. They've worked really hard. I think they still got a long way to go, but they're turning the corner, and they got at least a solid 6 drivers that can win on any Sunday, it seems, as long as they're bringing the speed.
It's an exciting time. This has been kind of an interesting season thus far. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride with the way the racing has gone, the commentary on the package, the great stories like certainly the Alex Bowman win is, I think, going to be one of the great stories of the season, to be honest with you. Which brings us to this coming weekend. And before I get to that, Peter, you wanted to make one additional point.
Yeah, when you brought up it's been an interesting season, that got me thinking. This is something that you hear the talking heads of NASCAR constantly talking about, because we all know what it boils down to: a Final Four. We didn't do this when we got pretty much at what we would call the halfway point or so of the season with the Coke 600. But if you had to right now, who would be those 4 guys? Who do you think are really emerging as those clear-cut favorites, if you had to call it?
Wow. Anthony, I'm going to yield to you first while I put my thinking cap
The
on.
championship 4?
Yeah.
Oh, crud. um, I think you're gonna see very similar to what last year's was with Kyle, Joey, um, probably Martin. I can't see him faltering with the amount of wins he's got so far. I'm gonna put a Hendrick driver in there. I'm gonna put Chase in there. He's good at Phoenix. He's good at Martinsville. He's really good at Dover. It's about time, and it looks like it's becoming the season where he doesn't need to be a Kyle Busch to win the championship. He could be a Matt Kenseth, pull off one win to get in the playoffs, and let the consistency carry him through. That's kind of what happened to Joey last year. I could see that being the top 4 as long as that consistency from Chase at those tracks hits at the right time. I could see him pulling a Jimmy Johnson and just firing right off on playoff time and just stealing them.
I feel like that's an excellent point. I mean, I really think that where we're at right now, as opposed to what we saw at the end of last year, you got to look at Kyle and Joey Logano as those clear cut guys, because week in week out they are very fast. They're always up there. Truex is right there with them. I mean, I think he's tied with Kyle Busch, 4 wins for the most all season.
Yeah, he pulled within 4 wins. I think Kyle still has him on points.
Yeah,
because he fired off faster, but
yeah,
he's chomping at the bits. And Harvick, the biggest reason why I didn't pick Harvick was this past race at Phoenix, he wasn't strong. He hasn't been as strong as he has been since his championship year at Phoenix. He's faltered at Martinsville. He struggled greatly there. I think he doesn't even have a win at that track. So I could see him being the one that doesn't get in unless he somehow finds his way to victory lane before the playoffs. He could gain a little bit of momentum off of that.
Yeah, if they turn it on, I can see for sure. But I feel like, again, that 4th driver is the one that's in question. Sure, I love your point on Chase. Brad was somebody that showed up really big early on in the season. It's kind of faded, but still showing the consistency. But Rick, what did you think about this? Who do you got?
Well, I've got certainly Kyle Busch, certainly Joey Logano. I think it's going to be Truex, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I we're not supposed to play favorites on this show. I actually want it to be Chase. I think that would be very good for the sport, and I'm going to explain why in a second. But I have a feeling that it's actually going to be Brad K. I think you're going to see, he's one of those drivers that tends to make tremendous adjustments the second time around. He never makes the same mistakes twice, ever. If you notice that throughout his career. I think it's going to be a Penske Gibbs shootout in Homestead. I think Chase is going to come ever so close. I'm actually going to tell you why I think Chase getting in to the Final Four would be the best possible thing for the sport. And this is no disrespect to any other drivers. Joey Logano has been a tremendous champion. He has, and I give a lot of that credit to Roger Penske. Roger has expectations, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, of his employees, whether it's the leasing company employees or the racing entity employees. Joey has become very comfortable in his own skin. He's well-spoken. He does an awful lot of charitable work. He is far more poised than he's ever been before. I think he's been an outstanding ambassador for NASCAR. I see Chase. Everybody goes to the obvious reasons with Chase. He's got a pedigreed name. But he brings something to the table that NASCAR has needed for a very long time. And with absolutely no disrespect to Jimmy Johnson, who has done everything humanly possible to be right up there in discussions with both Earnhardt Sr. and Petty. It's just a different era. That's all it is. When we get into those discussions, it's just a different era, folks. That's all it is. But Chase, I think, represents the greatest entry to this sport since Jeff Gordon. And I'm going out on a limb saying that for a lot of different reasons. When you look at the merchandising, the television commercials, his persona when he's interviewed, I'll tell you what, that kid is going to carry this sport on his very ample shoulders for many years. I'm not saying it because the good folks at Chase Elliott Nation watch this channel. I'm saying it because if you've observed this sport for as many years as I have, he is a once-in-a-generation driver. That's what he is. Peter, your thoughts on my comments there?
No, I mean, I have to agree. As someone who watched, Jeff Gordon come up, through the ranks and battle with the greats of the sport, Chase reminds me so much of it, and it was only fitting that they both shared the 24. But there's one thing that Chase brings, and I think you were alluding to it, that he brings that no other driver, with no disrespect, really can achieve, is he'd be the first Southern champion quite some time.
Right.
I think that means a lot, especially for where the sport's come from, and he's got a huge following, nationwide, of course, but in the roots, in the heartland of NASCAR, he's become the new driver. He's become that guy that everybody can rally around. This past weekend, I was just talking to someone who happened to have a Chase Elliott hat on at the event that I was at. And he said, he was like, I was a lifelong Dale Sr. fan, I became a Dale Jr. fan, and now I'm a Chase Elliott fan. He's like, I didn't care much for Jeff Gordon. I wasn't a fan of Jimmy Johnson. And I showed him my experience. He's like, isn't it funny how we've kind of rallied behind the same guy? Because he stands for what the Earnhardts were to him, and he stands for what Gordon was to me. He kind of bridges everything and culminates what NASCAR really was. And he'd be the first one to tell you, I just want to go out there. I want to race. I want to do my family proud. And he's got a huge relationship with his father, which is awesome. You can see it clear as day. I mean, his father spots for him at the road course. He's got a tremendous amount of respect, and I 100% believe it wasn't because that was his number coming up. It was because he shares that number with his father is the reason why it's back on the door of his car. There's so much to like about Chase, and I only hope that we'll be able to see him hoist one, if not many, trophies in the future, especially championship.
I think the fact that Jeff essentially handpicked Chase also gave a lot of momentum behind just the publicity and the popularity behind Chase. I know that, he was touted and scouted by Hendrick for quite some time before Jeff even thought about coming out of the car. But the fact that he was really, for the first time, I think, probably ever in the sport, like hand-picked to replace somebody by that driver, of that notoriety or of that popularity, I think added a lot of momentum behind the Chase train. And it's not like he hasn't proven himself in the lower series. Right. This is the next stepping stone, and it's expected of him, but I don't think there's a huge amount of pressure on him.
There's one thing too to notice as well, like when Jeff steps out of the booth, especially the first few years before the number change and whatnot, he was working very closely with the 24 team and the 9 team. He was there for the victory at Dover, and he's very, very much involved with the development of Chase, and Chase has clearly identified that as well. So it's really cool to see how almost like the torch has been passed, even though there was different drivers that kind of bridged the gap between Gordon to Elliott. It's really kind of seen, kind of like, I guess, the changing of the guard, so to speak, the new era of NASCAR developing, and he's the one that, as Rick said before, is going to take the charge and lead that.
Yeah, that's definitely something to point out. Is even after, like you said, after Chase made the move to the 9 car, you still saw Jeff in that 9 pit box. It wasn't it. That was the moment of realization for me, where it wasn't a loyalty to his number
Yeah.
as to why he was helping Chase out. It was a loyalty to Chase and a belief in Chase as a driver. Instead of I want to see my car, my number in victory lane, it was I want to see Chase in victory lane. So
Yes.
to see that kind of exuberance and happiness out of Jeff at Dover last year was like, wow, all right, Jeff believes in the kid, not the number. All right, let's go. Let's do this.
Well, we shall see. Homestead is, believe it or not all that far away. These seasons just go by more and more quickly every year. And of course, this week we head back to the center of auto racing, Daytona. It's the last time for the foreseeable future we're going to have a Daytona race on or around the July 4th weekend. Real quickly, any thoughts on who to look for as we go racing at Daytona under the lights?
I'll take that one first. Just sheerly, and I got to give kudos to Anthony on this because he broke it to me first. Sheerly on the paint scheme itself, I'm going William Byron in this white flamed Chevy Camaro. I want to see it win.
I need that car on my shelf with some confetti on it.
Absolutely. I'm going William Byron. He showed that he could be a pretty good restricted plate racer. When I had my big Daytona 500 party early in the year, a lot of my friends were rallying behind him because he looked like he was driving Jeff's car and he was up front for a long period of time. So how cool would that be?
How cool would it be? I'll tell you, I'm usually the stoic one on this show. If William Byron wins Saturday night, Truex Jr. is going to be in therapy. But I digress.
I don't know. I was gonna say Chase just because Talladega. He's the only one that's had success with the non-restrictor plate on what we traditionally known as a restrictor plate track. You can't count out any of the Stewart-Haas guys. You can't count out any of the Joe Gibbs or Penske guys. And now, especially the Hendrick and Ganassi guys, you gotta. Before I get into Daytona, let's give Larson a huge piece of the pie and a big piece of credit for his post-race interview, giving a big kudos to Hendrick engines and saying it was really cool to have 2 Hendrick motors up there battling for the win.
Absolutely.
So let's just give him a round of applause on that one for acknowledging that. But I'm going to go out on a whim and say Bowman. He's got a taste of victory, and we said this before we even thought of this channel in existence. After Chase won at Watkins Glen, you've got a taste. He's going to get more. He's going to get hungrier, and they're going to keep on coming. Now he's in a position. It's a guarantee he's in the playoffs because there's fewer races than there are potential winners to take spots, or there's the exact number, I think, at this point. With Bowman winning because of the fact that he was already in the top 16 when he won. So he's not going to get bounced out as if there's a different winner that's a non-repeat winner every week from here until the playoffs, I believe. If somebody does repeat, it's a guarantee lock no matter what. There's no way he's not in the playoffs. They're in a position right now where they can try some things. Same thing with Chase. I think you're going to see Chad throw the kitchen sink at it to try to get that victory. You know, Chad, look, who would have thought that the last 2 drivers to be fighting for a victory at Hendrick Motorsports would be Chad Knaust and William Byron and Jimmy Johnson with his new crew chief? They're hungrier probably than Chase and Bowman are right now to try to get out of that hole and be like, yeah, I'm the one that got the victory first. Now you're the only one without one.
Chad,
So
Chad really wants to win.
Oh, Chad! I think Chad wants to win way worse than Jimmy does. Not to take anything away from Jimmy, I'm not saying that the fire isn't there, but I think that Chad really wants to get that 24 back in victory lane. That 24 hasn't been in victory lane since 2015 at Martinsville. He started his career with that car, and it was always his dream to crew chief that car to victory lane. I think Chad's got those extra motivational pieces to get that 24 car in victory lane, and I think really right now Daytona is his best shot before I would say probably before we return to a place like Michigan at the end of the summer. But I'm gonna go with Bowman just because he's got the freshest taste of victory in his mouth.
You're going with Bowman. Okay, my turn. I am going to go with Busch.
Kurt.
But it's going to be Kurt. and how did you know I was going to say that? He's been knocking at the door so much all year long. And I think there's a little bit left in the tank for him to pull one out at Daytona.
I definitely got
I can see that for sure.
I mean, you look at it, like I thought you said, with repeat winners and possible first-time winners, it's a short list on guys who haven't won that could win, that have shown the speed. He's right on that list. I would say there's 4 to 5. I'll list them quick, and you guys probably agree or disagree. It's all good. Kurt and Larson, definitely. Harvick, if he can put together a complete race. Amarola's been fast. Those are my 4. And then I would say, based on the recent success and the track position they've had, William Byron. Outside of those 5 drivers, I really haven't seen anybody show me that they can come up there and win a race outside of who's already won. So I definitely like that Kurt pick.
There's 9 spots open, and I think there's 9 races left. And Kurt's one of Kurt. Who's your wild card pick? Where did he come from?
Oh, I got one. I love to see, because Ford's always had speed at these restricted plate races. I'd love to see Ryan Blaney be that next Penske guy up to get that win. But I think he's really got to string together a complete race. It seems like he's overdriving the last few weeks, though. Yeah,
and Daytona I don't think is a place you can overdrive even if you tried.
Yep.
And he's got a history of where did he come from. Look at the Roval last year.
Yes.
So that's a good pick. I like it. He's got that Penske power, that Ford sleekness. Rick, who do you got?
This is always a tough one because anything can happen at Daytona. I am going to take a pass because of the hot lap session coming up.
Okay, fair enough.
And that's a spoiler or a tickler for the hot lap session because the driver that I was going to mention is someone who probably should show up in the hot lap session.
Okay.
I won't give it away, but I'm going to take a pass. How about you?
I'm going with a sentimental one. I'm going with Bubba. Again, last week during that rain delay, he was open about his struggles. I've got a special connection with those struggles. So to see him kind of leading the way and like opening people's eyes up and not being afraid anymore to talk about it, I know how hard that can be to come out and even just acknowledge it to yourself. Daytona is the perfect setting for that 43 car and that team to get into victory lane if he can keep the nose clean. He's the type of driver that's not afraid to put those moves on to try to get to the front. He's just got to, I think, show a little bit more patience. I think he got a good taste of success there last year. I think he's starting to get himself together emotionally, mental health-wise. The last few weeks, we've seen him do the Legends racing and having fun with that, get him basically back to his roots. I would absolutely love to see Bubba Wallace get into victory lane, cry like a baby, get a big old bear hug from Ryan and everybody else in the garage, because if he gets into victory lane, I'll be right there crying my eyes out with him.
I think we all will. And that's, how great would it be for him, obviously, and how great would it be to see the 43 in victory lane at Daytona?
Yeah. And that's another one of those victories that you could say is a team career saving victory, let alone the driver's career. Just a team keep them alive.
How perfect would it be for the final Firecracker 400 to have the famous 43 in victory lane?
That's true.
That would be cool.
The same place as Richard's last victory in that same kingdom.
How wonderful would that be? And then just another great story we could add to this season that, for as many doggy downers as there's been since camp was broken in February, there's been some wonderful stories. And I think we'll probably see another one come out of the racing at Daytona on Saturday night. It is now time for our hot lap session. And I've got your teammate walking by me here, and I can't wait to hear what his take is on this question. Remember, you guys know the drill. It's 30 seconds only. Let's see. I'm trying to think of rotation. Last time, who went first? I think, Peter, you did.
Peter went first. I went for the very first one.
Okay. So, Anthony, you're up. A lot has been said. A lot has been said of the drivers at Stewart-Haas Racing. Kevin Harvick has had a great points year, but has had some trouble in pit lane, some unfortunate incidents on the track. You've seen some great moments from Boyer, although that seems to be fading a bit. In fairness, some great moments from Suarez, but no real consistency. And Almirola is always a threat. Here's the hot lap question. Which of the Stewart-Haas drivers, if any, and you can say none, will be the first to get to victory lane? Go.
All right, I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick. There was rumors and talks in the last week or so of how important is it for Stewart-Haas to get all 4 drivers into the playoffs versus getting Kevin that first victory. I think right now they're balls in on getting Harvick that first win. I think he's going to be the first one. I think he's also going to be the only one out of the camp that gets a victory. I hope and pray it comes before the playoffs, or else they're in trouble.
Wow. Okay, so Anthony goes with the historic pick for Stewart-Haas Racing. He's clearly the top driver there, or has been historically. I'm going to ask, and this is a little uncharacteristic in the hot lap session, where does he get that victory?
That's tough. I have no idea. I think it's going to be a mile and a half. That's all that I know. If I have to pick a track, Michigan.
Okay. Peter, you're up. Which of the 4 at SHR is the first to get to victory lane, and where?
I mean, I'll take the low-hanging fruit. I have to say Kevin Harvick. He's been the most consistent. He's, like you said, he's got the greatest points right now. If only he could string together a complete race, I feel like he's not too far off. If I had to choose a track, he's been good there before, especially when he was in the playoffs. I'd say it's Loudon. Loudon's a driver's track. He won there last year. I could see him doing it again. I'd love to see him put the bumper on the 18 to do it again. I could see it being him. But if I had to choose somebody else, I'd choose Eric Almirola. I think Almirola could win on either a super speedway or a mile and a half. He's been consistent. Just got to find a little bit more of that 10 car, and I think he'll be there too.
Well, Peter, you are a mind reader because, as you folks know, you both know, and our audience knows, I passed on who is winning Saturday night at Daytona. And I'm going to use all of my 30 seconds up real quickly. It's going to be Eric Almirola, and it's going to be Saturday night.
I like it. I like that pick. It's a definite possibility.
I could see it.
Redemption for last year. Not fully because it's not the 500, but it's a nice healing, nice little piece of healing for that. But reason I picked Harvick is ever since that story broke, and I think it's been a little bit more than that now. I think it's probably been stirring for 3 weeks. Is ever since there was the speculation, do you focus all on getting Harvick into victory lane? You kind of see a little drop off of the 41, and then you see a little drop off of the 14, and the 10 is still there. He's still consistent, but he's starting to consistently kind of find his place around 10th and 11th, not top fives. If Harvick doesn't win, I'm not panicking on Harvick. I'm not panicking on SHR. They're still one of the top teams. Harvick is well in the points battle, ahead of Bowman, ahead of a few other drivers that already have a victory or two. So he's there when he needs to be. He's getting the points that he needs. I think a lot of this is from last year where he was just so dominant, and now it's just he's having a Harvick year. He's consistent. He's good. He hasn't gotten the victory that he's had yet, but it's sometimes taken him until the summer months to get a victory before. So I'm not panicking. Only reason I picked Michigan is because it's kind of the last race where I could remember he really had a chance of winning. It was just Logano was just that much better.
He could have almost like a Matt Kenseth kind of win there. Like I'm trying to come up with a term for this, Kensian maybe, but like with where Kenseth won the championship and just being so gosh darn consistent and just rattling off maybe a solid victory, just when opportune time comes. I mean, you can't count him out. Rick, I have to say, I didn't expect that hot lap to go the way it did. I thought when you mentioned Stuart Haas, it would have been with the recent success of Cole Custer. It would have been like, who's in, who's out of those 4 guys, and just to kind of lead the way on there. I would say it would have been the newest guy. If you asked me this at the start of the season, if Custer came out of the gates as fiery as he has been, I would have said, you know what? I don't know if Suarez really fits there. I get it, sponsorship, the good ride quality, second chance, very similar to when a Gibbs driver left and went to Penske. But if I really had to choose, just based on the nature of the sport, how a lot of teams are signing young drivers because it's a lower salary, I would say it's Clint. Clint seems to really kind of started to fade out, as Anthony alluded to before. So that's where I thought you were going with this hot lap question. I really have to say.
I'm gonna go. Can I go on a business point of view on that one to answer?
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with Peter, but I'm looking at it from a business point of view. Harvick brings Busch. Harvick brings Jimmy Johns. There's no way they're leaving him. Smithfield is stuck with Eric, and we all know that the only reason Suarez, I think, is still in a seat is because he's got Aris that follows him. Who is Cole Custer's sponsor in the Xfinity Series and when he was in the Truck Series?
Haas.
Who is the only sponsored Haas car in the field for Stuart Haas Racing consistently throughout the year?
41.
Then you lose absolutely no money by losing Boyer and gaining Cole. You actually probably make money because you don't have to pay him as much as Clint.
Exactly.
Even if Clint was, I think, contending with points with Harvick and kind of really blowing Eric and Daniel out of the water, I still think from a business perspective, let alone the fact that Cole's got a father in the company and is pretty much, that's a lot of weight to carry, like a lot of weight to swing. From a business point of view, you have to put him in the same car that, look, you don't, it's a move up without sacrificing anything. It's not like he's bringing a sponsor with him. The sponsor on his car in the Xfinity Series is it's only on the 14 car. You're not going to lose anything.
It's kind of like you say, addition by subtraction.
Yeah, they're going to make money by signing him because you don't have to pay him as much. And look, Joey Logano paid him one of the biggest compliments I think any Cup Series driver racing in the Xfinity has given in at least the last 10 or 15 years. Joey said, look, the kid's ready for the next level. He's going to be in a ride next year. He deserves it. I can't in recent memory at all remember a Cup Series driver giving a compliment like that, except for maybe when Junior and Keselowski were racing at either Charlotte when Hamlin spun Keselowski or when Junior was with Keselowski racing together at Talladega and Keselowski won in a Junior Motorsports car. I think that like one of those two races, Junior said he's ready for the big time. He deserves a shot. But again, that was back in 08 or 09.
Texas of 2014, Chase Elliott beats Harvick and Busch, and they both had a lot of praise for him as well.
Yeah, that's true. I wasn't really following much back then. I was more focused on Cup Series. But yeah, no, that's another prime example. And then even last year when Harvick went to K&N and raced against Haley,
yes,
he gave her a big major throw of support, even on his XM radio show.
Yep.
He said, look, this girl's focused. This girl's way ahead of the curve. And then in the same radio broadcast said that Danica is 10 years behind the curve. That's something I think we definitely need to make an episode coming up on, because if you watch that Dale Jr. download or listen to it, there's a lot of shade thrown at all the other females that have tried and failed and are currently trying and currently failing miserably in trying to make it in NASCAR, and there's so much praise for this girl. It's unbelievable. Like I told you guys on Facebook Messenger, this is somebody who I have absolutely no problem with Loretta and Anastasia looking up to as a role model in the sport if that's what they choose. Like that's somebody like I can totally be like, yep, I'll back you 100% on liking that person.
Well, I know I talked about Kurt Busch winning, but I would not be surprised, as I said, if it isn't Eric Almirola. I just think he's a a guy who is consistently good at the super speedways, and I do agree with you. I think the odd man out is going to be Clint Boyer. Sadly, I'm not sure where he lands. He's still a good quality driver. Seats in good cars are drying up very quickly. And, we've seen elite drivers lose their ride to a kid coming in. We've seen that happen. So, and in fairness, bless you, I don't know that Clint is certainly not in the category of like a Matt Kenseth. So, yes, I think he could be the odd man out at Stewart-Haas.
And it sucks for him because he's still got talent. He's still got it. But like you said, what good seats are coming up? That's the same predicament with Christopher Bell. Like
right.
Cole Custer's got a seat to go into. It's just who's going to be the odd man out. Same thing with Joe Gibbs Racing. Christopher Bell deserves a shot, whether you like him in a Toyota or him at all because of the team he races for. Somebody's going to get screwed out of a seat that really doesn't deserve to be screwed out of a seat.
Right.
That's the same camp. Like who is it? Like, do you really kind of mess over Matt D, who put his whole career and life on the line by leaving and signing with the 95 team? Or do you say, Eric, look, you just didn't produce enough? I can't see how you get rid of Denny. Denny's bringing a bunch of sponsorship, unless Denny has a horrible fall off over the course of the rest of the season, which he's kind of starting to head in that direction.
You never. The interesting thing about this sport is, and we do have to do an entire episode around this. A lot of the decisions are made by the sponsors.
Which I have a fantasy question when you're done with this.
If FedEx wants Denny Hamlin to be in that chair, and that's their guy, and I don't know if he is or isn't, then they're not going to play ball with Gibbs if the thought is let's replace Hamlin.
Yeah.
These companies are spending tens of millions of dollars a year, and believe me, they have a significant say on who sits in that driver's seat.
Yeah. That's my fantasy question. If you're Joe Gibbs, Mars Candy comes up to you and says, so Christopher Bell, we want him in the 18 next year. What do you do? If you're Joe Gibbs, do you say okay, or do you go with Kyle and risk losing Christopher Bell and possibly Mars Candy?
I'm going to tell you how I feel, because I come from a business background. I think the dollars that Mars brings to Gibbs is really only surpassed by the dollars invested by Toyota. And if Mars says we want to make a change, Gibbs is not going to want to lose one of the elite drivers on the track today. And if that's the case, he's going to have to find a sponsor for him. He's going to have to find, he'll have to move, some of the other secondary sponsors probably to the 20 and say goodbye to Eric Jones. Joe Gibbs is not going to jettison Kyle Busch. It's not going to happen. If it hasn't happened yet because of some of the antics that Busch has pulled over the years, even if Mars goes to Coach Gibbs and says, this is the young man we want in our seat, Gibbs is going to find a spot for Kyle Busch. That's my opinion. Peter, what do you think?
Sorry, I had the microphone off again. I'm going to have to agree with that too. I mean, yeah, just Kyle's really reinvented Gibbs. I mean, that would be one heck of a scenario, though. I have to say that to see if Mars really did branch off and really try to put Christopher Bell in the #1 seat at Joe Gibbs Racing. It would be really interesting to see if that ever happened. But I mean, I couldn't see it. I would say the 18, that brand is so iconic and so established with Kyle Busch that Joe Gibbs probably stands pat and supports his driver. But like you said, from a business perspective, Toyota's the only sponsor or only representative that probably pays more to Joe Gibbs Racing than Mars does. And Toyota is head over heels with Kyle Busch. He has been their most successful driver. He has pretty much put Toyota on the map in terms of NASCAR. I would say Toyota would probably stand really firm and say we are not losing that driver. I think everybody else is open. I definitely think, as much as he had a great connection to JD and God rest his soul, I think Denny is in big play. Unless, of course, FedEx stands their ground and says Denny's our guy. Just like how Lowe's and Jimmy Johnson were for so many years, we want to surpass that longest tenured sponsor thing with the driver. We want to stay with Denny until Denny's had enough. I don't see Denny achieving anything more than he's achieved. All right, 2 Daytona 500s is awesome. Could you win another one? Of course. After you win one, you could possibly win another one. But I feel like the days of him being a championship contender are done. I know he was in the thick of it with this elimination format, and I believe it was 2017 with the Chase Elliott drama. But I mean, let's be honest, he really wasn't dominant in those playoffs. He was able to point his way. He hasn't shown that he can be the driver of the caliber of the Harvicks and the Kyle Bushes and the Truexes and the Jimmy Johnsons. So I feel like you know what you got with Denny. It's not going to get any better. So is this enough to keep him? Eric Jones is interesting. Eric Jones was their guy before Christopher Bell was their guy or was Toyota's guy. Eric Jones won everything under the sun for Toyota. He's been Rookie of the Year 3 consecutive years in a row. Truck Xfinity Cup. Was so close to winning a championship in Xfinity. If it wasn't for the format, would have been a shoo-in for that title. Very consistent, dominant year. So again, Eric Jones has achieved a lot. He seemed to be. I know Anthony and I have joked about this, in passing, just talking NASCAR as we always do. He was their golden boy. He was the next golden child after Kyle Busch. It made sense to make the change with Kenseth and him, but now to kind of have that fizzle out as fast as it has, especially with how touted he was, that'd be crazy. I mean, you have to double down. I mean, I know he is a special talent, but you really have to double down and believe that Christopher Bell is your next Kyle Busch, not just a Kyle Larson, because we know Kyle Larson's an immense talent. They often get compared because of the dirt racing. You have to double down and believe if you're going to let Jones go, that Christopher Bell is your next Kyle Busch. That's right.
Interesting. Well, a great show tonight, guys. We had a couple of weeks to catch up on, and some great topics. And your fantasy question was fantastic. It should be interesting to see how this plays out. This young talent doesn't come around all that often, so there has to be a seat for these guys. And I don't see teams who've invested in these young guys just losing them before they even have a chance to emerge as the future stars of the sport. So, with that, Anthony, tell us how the audience can stay in touch with Three Wide as we progress through the NASCAR season and beyond. How do they do that?
Same as always, guys. If you come across our channel or come across our videos, just hit the subscribe button. We try to post weekly. Sometimes life gets in the way, but we will recap the races that we miss. We will talk about important topics in the sport that we miss. Hit the subscribe button, hit that bell icon. You'll get emails and messages straight to your phone, letting you know when we go live and whenever we post a video. We're going to start planning something big. The three of us are going to be at Pocono for the weekend, so we'll probably do a live stream at some point there, and try to reach out to you guys, see if anybody else is at the track.
That's a great point. I do, read that many of the folks in Chase Elliott Nation go to many of the races, and we would love to be able to connect with some of you when we're at Pocono. That's coming up really just in a few short weeks. I know I am getting down there on Friday.
We will the same.
And we always manage to do our tailgating. And if there are any fans around, touch base with us, and we'll make sure that we set you up with a burger or a dog or a cold one, and get to sit around and talk NASCAR. We've got a kind of an extended group going this year, and kind of an exciting weekend for all of us.
Absolutely.
Well, best tailgate at Pocono, by the way. Nobody makes a burger as good as Rick, and I will stand pat on that one. So you're not going to find a better burger in the entire town.
It's definitely not the craziest party or the craziest tailgate, but it is the best food.
We're trying to figure out what we're going to do this year and what little things we can change up to stop everything from getting a little bit, old and repetitive. So
I wonder if we could find a recipe for the Martinsville dog.
Oh.
And then switch it and make a Pocono dog. Just mess with the recipe just enough where it's a Pocono dog.
Well, it is time to look upstairs, and I can see the spotter is getting our attention. Remember, until that spotter tells you that you are clear, you are running
3 wide.
So, for Anthony and for Peter, I'm Rick. Everybody enjoy Daytona. Have a great 4th of July in the greatest nation God ever put on this earth. A patriotic one, a safe and happy one. If you are traveling, very safe travels. If you are heading to the beach, remember that sunscreen. And we will talk to you after Daytona. Have a great night, everybody. So long.